I'm back to read another book today. And I chose this book for a very special reason. This book, Ruby Bridges by Robert Coles, is about an extremely strong young lady. And right now at Cypress, we have an extremely strong young lady that I want to say hi to, Joyce Solomon. Hi, Joyce. We're all thinking about you. Joyce was in an accident. She's recovering in the hospital right now. And I wanted to say I'm so proud of you. Be strong. Be healthy. I know that it's not easy all the time, but we are all thinking about you, and our thoughts and our prayers are with you, and we can't wait to see you again healthy and strong. And today, Joyce, I'm going to read this book for you and everyone else. This is Ruby Bridges. Ruby Bridges was born in a small cabin near Tylertown, Mississippi. We were very poor. Very, very poor, Ruby said. My daddy worked picking crops. We just barely got by. There were times when we didn't have much to eat. The people who owned the land were bringing machines to pick the crops, so my daddy lost his job. And that's when we had to move. I remember us leaving. I was 4, I think. In 1957, the family moved to New Orleans, Louisiana. Ruby's father became a janitor. Her mother took care of the children during the day. And after they were tucked in bed at night, Ruby's mother went to work scrubbing floors at a bank. Every Sunday, the family went to church. We wanted our children to be near God's Spirit, Ruby's mother said. We wanted them to start feeling close to Him from the very start. At that time, black children and white children went to separate schools in New Orleans. The black children were not able to receive the same education that white children were. It wasn't fair, and it was against the nation's laws. In 1960, a judge ordered 4 black girls to go to 2 white elementary schools. 3 of the girls were sent to McDonough 19, but 6-year-old Ruby Bridges was sent to first grade in the William France Elementary School. Wonder if she's nervous. It's hard to go to a new school altogether, but to be the first person to go to an all-white school would be very scary. Ruby's parents were proud of their daughter that she had been chosen to take part in an important event in American history. They went to church. We sat there and prayed to God, Ruby's mother said, that we'd all be strong and we'd have the courage and we'd get through any trouble. And Ruby would be a good girl and she'd hold her head up high and be a credit to her own people and a credit to all the American people. We prayed long and we prayed hard. On Ruby's first day, a large crowd of angry white people gathered outside the France Elementary School. The people carried signs that said they didn't want black children at a white school. People called Ruby names. Some even wanted to hurt her. The city and state police did not even come to help. The President of the United States ordered federal marshals, a marshal is like a policeman, to walk with Ruby into the school building. The marshals had to carry guns. Every day for weeks that turned into months, Ruby experienced that kind of school day. She walked to France school surrounded by marshals, wearing a clean dress and a bow and her hair, and carrying a lunch pail. Ruby walked slowly the first few blocks. As Ruby approached the school, men and women and children shouted at her. They pushed toward her. The marshals kept them from Ruby by threatening to arrest them. Ruby would hurry through the crowd and not say a word. The white people in the neighborhood would not send their children to school. When Ruby got inside the building, she was all alone except for her teacher, Mrs. Henry. There were no other children to keep Ruby company, to play and learn with her, to eat lunch with. But every day, Ruby went into the classroom with a big smile on her face, ready to get down to the business of learning. She was polite and she worked well at her desk, Mrs. Henry said. She enjoyed her time there. She didn't seem nervous or anxious or irritable or scared. She seemed as normal and relaxed as any child I have ever taught. So Ruby began learning how to read and write in an empty classroom. Sometimes I'd look over at her and wonder how she did it, said Mrs. Henry. How she went by all those mobs and sat there all by herself and yet seemed so relaxed and comfortable. Mrs. Henry would question Ruby in order to find out if the girl was really nervous and afraid, even though she seemed so calm and confident. But Ruby kept saying she was doing fine. The teacher decided to wait and see if Ruby would begin keeping relaxed and confident and hopeful, or if she gradually began to wear down, or even decide that she no longer wanted to come to school. Then one morning something happened. Mrs. Henry stood by the window in her classroom as she usually did, watching Ruby walk towards school. Suddenly, Ruby stopped, right in front of the mob of howling and screaming people. She stood there facing all those men and women. She seemed to be talking to them. Mrs. Henry saw Ruby's lips moving and wondered what Ruby could be saying. The crowd seemed ready to kill her. The marshals were frightened. They tried to persuade Ruby to move along. They tried to hurry her into the school, but Ruby wouldn't budge. Then Ruby stopped talking and walked into the school. Do you wonder what she was saying? When she went into the classroom, Mrs. Henry asked her what happened. Mrs. Henry told Ruby that she'd been watching outside, and she was surprised when Ruby stopped and talked with the people in the mob. Ruby became irritated. I didn't stop and talk to them, she said. Ruby, I saw you talking. Mrs. Henry said, I saw your lips moving. Ruby, I wasn't talking, said Ruby. I was praying. I was praying for them. Every morning, Ruby had stopped a few blocks from school to say a prayer for the people who hated her. This morning, she forgot until she was already in the middle of the angry mob. When school was over for the day, Ruby hurried through the mob as usual. After she walked a few blocks and the crowd was behind her, Ruby said the prayer she repeated twice a day, before and after school. Please God, try to forgive those people, because even if they say those bad things, they don't know what they're doing. So you could forgive them, just like you did the folks a long time ago when they said terrible things about you. Later that year, 2 white boys joined Ruby at France Elementary School. Their parents were tired of seeing the boys get into mischief around the house, and they could have been in school and learning. The mob became very angry when the first white students went back to school, but the boys were soon joined by other children. We've been sitting back and letting our children get cheated out of an education because some people have tried to take the laws into their own hands. One parent said, it is time for us to fight for the side of the law and for children's right to go to school and get an education. They all did get their education. Ruby and a growing number of boys and girls who went to school with her. By the time Ruby was in 2nd grade, the mobs had given up their struggle to scare Ruby and defeat the federal judge's order that New Orleans schools be desegregated so that children of all races might be in the same classroom. Year after year, Ruby went to France school. She graduated from it and then went on to graduate from high school. Ruby Bridges is now married to a building contractor and has 4 sons. A successful businesswoman, she has created the Ruby Bridges Educational Foundation. There's a special exhibit featuring Ruby's story at the Children's Museum of Indianapolis. There she is. What a strong, strong young girl to be able to walk into that school every day, even though there were people telling her they didn't want her there. I'm so glad we live in a world where doesn't matter the color of our skin, we all get to go to school together. It wasn't always that way, but it is now. But because of a few strong people, those kinds of rules were changed. This is such a wonderful book, and of strength. And again, I want to say to Joyce, we are all thinking about you, and get better real soon. And we can't wait to see you again. See you guys tomorrow.